Shema Israel. Shema Israel, Yahweh Henu, Yahweh Kad, V'Tovet Yahweh, V'Kol V'Kol Kol Sheker Kol Deka. Hear Israel, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh is one. Shall Yahweh Elohim with our heart, with our being, with our strength.
All right. Chag Sameach. So it's still the feast, so it's Shabbat Shalom as well. Okay. So today's going to be a little bit of a follow-up message to one that I did a couple weeks ago about forgiveness. Because in there we read all the way through Hebrews 11 and looked at the individuals who are in Hebrews 11. They all had some sort of event in their lifetime that they needed forgiveness for, but yet they still landed themselves in this list of people. But I started re-looking at this list, and I started really trying to study it, and it struck me that there's something missing from this list, except for a few examples. So let's go to Hebrews 11, and we're going to start off in verse 1, and we're going to read through Hebrews 11 again and see if we can see what's missing. And by belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. For by this the elders obtained witness. By belief we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what is visible. By belief, Hevel offered to Elohim a greater slaughter offering than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, Elohim witnessing of these gifts. And through it, having died, he still speaks. And by belief, Canak was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because Elohim had translated him. For before his translation, he obtained witness that he pleased Elohim. But without belief, it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. By belief, Noah, having been warned of what was seen, yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark to save his house, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to belief. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was going about to receive as an inheritance, and he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Yitzhak and Yaakov, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking for a city having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. By belief also, Sarah herself was enabled to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the normal age, because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. And so from one, and him as good as dead, were born as numerous as the stars of the heaven, as countless as the sand which is by the seashore. In belief all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance, welcomed and embraced them, and confessed that they were aliens and strangers on the earth. For those who speak this way make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet, if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. But now they long for a better place, that is, a heavenly. Therefore, Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. By belief, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Yitzhak, and he who had received the promises offered up his only brought forth son, of whom it was said, in Yitzhak your seed shall be called. Reckoning that Elohim was able to raise even from the dead, from which he received him back as a type. By belief Yitzhak blessed Yaakov and Esau concerning that which was to come. And by belief Yaakov, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Yosef, and did reverence on the top of his staff. By belief, Yosef, when he was dying, made mention of the outgoing of the children of Israel, and gave orders concerning his bones. And by belief, Moshe, having been born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was a comely child, and were not afraid of the sovereign's commands. and by belief, having become great, refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh, choosing rather to be afflicted with the people of Elohim than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a time, deeming the reproach of Messiah greater riches than the treasures in Mitzrayim, for he was looking to the reward. By belief he left Mitzrayim, not fearing the wrath of the sovereign, for he was steadfast as seeing him who is invisible. By belief he performed the Passover or Pesach, and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By belief they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, and when the Mitzrites tried it, they were drowned. By belief the walls of Jericho fell, having been surrounded for 7 days. By belief Rachav the whore did not perish with those who did not believe, having received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to relate of Gideon and Barak and Shimshon and Jephthah, also of David and Shemuel, and the prophets, who through belief overcame reigns, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouth of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. Out of weaknesses were made strong, became mighty in battle, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrections, and others were tortured, not accepting release to obtain a better resurrection. And others had trials of mockings and floggings, and more of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were tried, they were sawn in two. They were slain with the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, being in need, afflicted, and mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in the deserts and mountains and caves and holes of the earth. And having obtained witness through the belief, all these did not receive the promise, Elohim having provided what is better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So what did y'all notice in that list? It's written down in the notes. Only 3 of those people are children of someone who's in the list. Isaac, Yaakov, and Yosef are the only children mentioned in that list. Now, sure, I think there should be more names of children in this list, but they're not there. And unfortunately, most of the time, there's a reason why there is a lack of children listed here. So that's what we're going to look at today. Why weren't there more children listed? Why aren't their names on here? And why is that even important? Now, recently, I'm going back over the history of Israel and their leaders. Now, Eli is not listed in this list, but he was a priest of Yahweh. Eli lived at the Hekal of Yahweh. And Eli was handed Shemuel to watch over from his youth. But Eli had a problem. So let's go to 1 Samuel 2, and we're going to start off in 12. 1 Samuel 2 and verse 12. And the sons of Eli were sons of Belial. They did not know Yahweh. And the ruling of the priests with the people was that when any man offered a slaughtering, the priest's servant shall come with a 3-pronged flesh hook in his hand while the meat was cooking, and shall thrust it into the basin or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself all that the flesh hook brought up. Thus they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who slaughtered, "Give meat for roasting to the priests, for he does not accept cooked meat from you, but raw." And if the man said to him, "Let the fat be burned up first, and take as much as your being desires," he would then answer him, "No, but give it to me now, and if not, I shall take it by strength." And the sin of the young men was very great before Yahweh, for the men despised the offering of Yahweh. So what happened that a man who was so close to Yahweh, who lived in the Hekal of Yahweh, would have sons who were so far removed? I'm not sure. We can only speculate as to the cause of what got them so far off track. Could it have been a lack of involvement with their father because he was involved in other matters? We don't know. Could it have been that he just assumed that his children would continue his walk without much oversight? Speculation. We will never know what exactly happened to his children to cause them to go so far off track of what Yahweh expected of them. There's only one thing that is a certainty in this situation, and that's that his children went off track. For them to despise the offerings of Yahweh when they were priests themselves, something went wrong. That's all we can be certain of. So what about this young lad, Shemuel, that Eli had charge over? Let's go to 1 Samuel 8, and we're going to start off in 1. 1 Samuel 8:1. And it came to be when Shemuel was old that he made his sons rulers over Israel. And the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second, Aviah, rulers in Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways, and turned aside after their own gain, and took bribes and twisted right ruling. And all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Shemuel at Ramah, and said to him, Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint for us a sovereign to rule over us like all the nations. But the word was evil in the eyes of Shemuel when they said, Give us a sovereign to rule over us. So Shemuel prayed to Yahweh. So at least here we get some kind of clue as to what happened to Shemuel's children. They got drunk on power. Looking at the conversations here with Israel and Samuel, Samuel's sons are part of the reason that Israel wanted a ruler and a sovereign. Israel thought they would be better served and better cared for by a king than they were their current rulers. Can you really blame them? No. The rulers that they had would twist right ruling if you paid them. And that's exactly what Yahweh said not to do. He said not to take a bribe to twist right ruling. But yet that's what they did. And for a man, Shemuel, who grew up in the Hekal of Yahweh, once again, having sons who are so far removed from what Yahweh wanted them to be. These two young men fell prey to what we talked about last night. So let's go to Luke 16:13. Luke 16:13. Luke 16:13. No servant is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cling to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and Mammon. These two young men couldn't serve Yahweh in their greed. They chose their greed over Yahweh. And think of the consequences for them. Think of what they lost because of their greed for money. Let's go to Exodus 18:1. Exodus 18:1. And Yithro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard of all that Elohim had done for Moshe and for Israel, his people, that Yahweh had brought Israel out of Mitzrayim. And Yithro, Moshe's father-in-law, took Zipporah, the wife of Moshe, after he had sent her back, and her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. And the name of the other was Eleazar, for he said, the Elohim of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Yithro, Moshe's father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moshe in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountains of Elohim. So why would I put that verse in there about Moshe? Because this is the last time Moses' sons are mentioned in Torah. And there's not very much mention of them here. Moses' sons really aren't ever mentioned again except for a brief mention in Chronicles where they are named in the genealogy of the priests at the Hekal. So 1 Chronicles 23:15. 1 Chronicles 23:15. The sons of Moshe, Gershom, and Eleazar. The sons of Gershom, Shebuel was the head, and the sons of Eleazar, Rechabiah was the head, and Eleazar had no other sons, but the sons of Rechabiah were very many. So throughout the rest of Scriptures, this is the last mention of Moshe and his lineage. It stops there. Now, it's not to say that his children were bad or that they even sinned, but Yahweh chose someone who was not of Moshe's lineage to succeed him. Joshua led after Moshe was taken by Yahweh. Just in our own kind of thinking, shouldn't Moshe's children have been close enough to Yahweh to lead Israel after he was gone? You would think they were, but they weren't. They weren't chosen. And the true reason for them not being chosen is never really discussed in Scripture. So for them, we don't really know what happened. We know they maintained some position within the priesthood, but not a position like Moshe had. So let's go to Numbers 3:1 real quick. Numbers 3:1. And these are the generations of Aharon and Moshe when Yahweh spoke with Moshe on Mount Sinai. And these are the names of the sons of Aharon: Nadav, the firstborn, and Avihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aharon, the anointed priest, whom he ordained to act as priests. And Nadav and Avihu had died before Yahweh when they brought strange fire before Yahweh in the wilderness of Sinai. And they had no children, so Eleazar and Ithamar acted as priests in the presence of Aharon, their father. So now this says these are the genealogies of Aharon and Moshe. But where's Moshe's genealogy? His sons aren't even mentioned here. Only the sons of Aharon. So this is what I'm trying to wrap my mind around, is Yahweh chose Aaron's sons to be priests to him, yet it was Yahweh who spoke to Moshe face to face, unlike he's ever spoken to any other man on this planet. But for some reason, his children didn't follow in his footsteps. And so we don't ever know why. We don't know what the reason was. We know they were still there, but it still seems odd that his children didn't have more prominence because of his position. So let's go to 1 Kings 11:1. 1 Kings 11:1. I don't know about anybody else, but this next part is probably one of the most tragic stories within Scripture to me. 1 Kings 11:1. And sovereign Shlomo loved many foreign women, in addition to the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations of whom Yahweh had said to the children of Israel, "You do not go into them, and they do not go into you. For they shall certainly turn away your hearts after their mighty ones." Shlomo clung to these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. And it came to be when Shlomo was old that his wives turned away his heart after other mighty ones, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh, his Elohim, as was the heart of his father David. So obviously we see that David had a heart, and that's why he's in that list in Hebrews. But Shlomo's got turned away. And that's very possibly the reason he's not. And Shlomo went after Ashtaroth, the mighty one of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Thus Shlomo did evil in the eyes of Yahweh and did not follow Yahweh completely like his father David. Then Shlomo built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And so he did for all his foreign wives who burned incense and slaughtered to their mighty ones. Therefore Yahweh was enraged with Shlomo, because his heart had turned away from Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this word not to go after other mighty ones. But he did not guard what Yahweh commanded. And Yahweh said to Shlomo, "Because you have done this, and have not guarded my covenant and my laws, which I have commanded you, I shall certainly tear the rain away from you and give it to your servant. Only I do not do it in your days for the sake of your father David. Out of the hand of your son I shall tear it." So for someone to be so close to Yahweh, to have actually had Yahweh appear to him twice, ask for such wisdom that no other wisdom could match it on the face of the earth, and to let these women tear his heart away from Yahweh, to build altars to them, to slaughter to them. Like I said, it's probably the most tragic story within Scriptures, if not one of them. So Solomon himself starts a chain of events for the kings of Judah. The next two kings who were kings were not righteous in the sight of Yahweh. They worshiped these foreign mighty ones, and they sacrificed their children to idols. And all Solomon had to do was maintain the heart that his father had given him. But he didn't. So let's go to Matthew 10:1. Matthew 10:1. And having called his 12 taught ones near, he gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every bodily weakness. And these are the name of the 12 emissaries. First, Shimon, who is called Kepha, and Andre his brother, Yaakov the son of Zabdi, and Yochanan his brother, Philip and Bartholomew and Toma and Mattatyahu the tax collector, Yaakov the son of Alphi, and Levi, whose name was Taddai, Shimon the Canaanite, and Yehuda from Kerioth, who did also deliver him up. Yahshua sent these 12 out, having commanded them, saying, "Do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Shomerites, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So why would I put them in there? How many of you can name one of the apostles' children who followed in their parents' footsteps? If you can, you got to be making it up because it's not out there. It's not contained within Scripture. And you can go do a Google search and you won't find it. That information's not out there. Not even legend. Now, I'm certain that at least some of them probably did according to their parents' works. But we don't have a record of what happened to them. And like Dee just said, there's not even legend of what happened to their children. Which you would expect, because these apostles were so venerated by the Christians that we have all kinds of legends of all the apostles, but not their children. And like I said, I went to the internet, I did Google search. You can do a Google search for the children of the apostles, and it doesn't even come up with a suggestion. All you get is books about the apostles, lives of the apostles, but nothing about their children. So let's go to 1 Corinthians 9:23. 1 Corinthians 9:23. And I do this because of the good news, so as to become a fellow partaker with it. Do you not know that those who run in a race indeed all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to obtain it. And everyone who competes controls himself in every way. Now they do it to receive a corruptible crown, but we for an incorruptible crown. Therefore I run accordingly, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I treat my body severely and make it my slave, so that when I have proclaimed to others, I myself might be rejected. So here Paul's worried about teaching the people the Tov Basar, the good news, and not being able to enjoy it with them. But I'm also sure that part of what Shaul is teaching here is that he would hate to see the people that he taught turn away from Yahweh. We see that come through in his letters. He is always trying to build up the belief in Yahweh, and he is always trying to correct situations that could cause people to stumble. And we read about that the other night in Corinthians. So as much as Shaul wants to save himself, he wants to save the people and watch them gain the same blessings that he himself is running the race for. So Proverbs 22:6. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he turns not away from it. Have my two little ones heard that before? Maybe, yeah. You think you've heard that verse before in the house? Yeah. Well, there's something that goes along with that in Deuteronomy 5:29. Deuteronomy 5:29. Oh, that they had such a heart in them to fear me and to guard all my commands, always, so that it might be well with them and with their children forever. So the parents have to have the right heart to give it to their children. So who in here wants to gain eternal salvation yet watch as your children walk away? Now, I know when I ask that question, the very prospect of that has some of you squirming in your seats. Just writing this message made me have those thoughts. And it was very disconcerting. Now, for Daryl and myself, you sitting in here are pretty much our children. So this verse in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he turns not away from it. That's how Daryl and I feel about everyone who sits in here, the people on Skype who get these messages. It's hard to realize how difficult it is for Daryl or myself to have someone who we've taught for years walk out the door and go look for something different because of all the effort we've put into them to train them, and yet we couldn't give them the one thing that they needed, which was a heart to follow after Yahweh. And I'm not saying that everybody that left here is out in the cold and has walked away forever. We don't know. But the two of us, we not only have our blood family to look after, we have all of you as well. So the second part to the Hebrew message is to teach our children. To teach them the best way we can. To fill them with as much knowledge of Yahweh as possible. And mainly for us not to be hypocrites, saying we follow Yahweh, but break His Torah through our actions. Children are very perceptive beings. They're very perceptive to what is going on, and when there is a discrepancy between words and actions. Now, we have no guarantee that these children will not walk away. There's no guarantees in Scripture. There's no promises in Scripture. We see that people who were very close to Yahweh had children who walked away. And walked almost as far away as you could possibly get. So it goes back to this verse that sometimes they just don't have the heart to be a person for Yahweh. And I hate to say it, but that's a reality that some of us may have to come to eventually. But as people who walk in Yahweh, as people that follow the Torah, we have to do our best so that they will follow in our footsteps to walk with Yahweh. So you being all my children, and you two being my children, that's my promise, is to always do the best I can for you to help you walk with Yahweh, so that I don't have to look at you one day as I'm seeing the back of you walk out the gate. So hopefully we will all do that. So may Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh guard you, and may Yahweh make His face to shine upon you.